Kacper Sztuka and Kacper Sztuka held the field to ransom in the first Eurocup-3 race start of the weekend at Portimau, whilst the Campos Red Bull drivers were at war with each other, with Ernesto Rivera, Jules Caranta and Caranta all wishing to assert themselves. The Round 1 race winners Matija Kolnagi and Maciej Gladish had struggled in qualifying and were trying to bounce back, but both men were finding the going very tough in the early stages. Even staying on track was proving to be hard work. Portimau's high elevation changes and variations of camber were definitely showcased in the early stages, as drivers tested and in some cases ran over the limits to find their feet in the opening laps. Keep those tyres clean, fellas. Kolnagi and Valerio Rinicella were eager to take the fight to the Campos Racing and Griffincorp squads, who had definitely found the pace compared to the opening weekend in Austria. MP Motorsport, by comparison, were now playing catch-up. Sztuka was struggling to match the pace of the Red Bull Young Guns, who clearly had a point to prove after a tricky opening weekend last month. But out in front, Kacper Sztuka would march forward in pursuit of his first win of the season. Garrett Berry and Preston Lambert were locked in a duel for the honour of the United States. But after the restart from a safety car, all eyes were on the Red Bull youngsters again, as Ernesto Rivera nearly stole the lead away from Kacper Sztuka. The Portimão circuit was serving up a sensational show for the crowds, and it was Mexico providing all the headlines, as Kacper Sztuka versus Rivera became the talk of the paddock. Rivera was using every trick he knew to grab an advantage, but Kacper Sztuka knew exactly where his car should be to aid his charge and keep him in the lead. Lap after lap, Rivera threw everything he had, but it just wasn't quite enough. There was drama further back too. Austrian star Oscar Wirtz was fortuitous to recover after a spin at the first corner, but he dropped to the back of the field. A safety car would be called a second time for a separate incident, and the group lined up in formation once again. 2 safety car periods in one race was quite the contrast to what had been shown in Austria. On the restart, James Egozi for Paul Motorsport was making impressive gains, and he had no inkling yet just how good things were going to be. Time was limited for Rivera to make his move on Kacper Sztuka, and with Sztuka right behind him, it was easy to make unforced errors. But on this occasion, it would be Kacper Sztuka that clinched the win, and just like in the first 2 years of Eurocup-3, there were now 3 different winners in the first 3 races. Next up in the schedule was Eurocup-3's first ever sprint race that saw James Egozi start pole as the top 12 from qualifying were reversed to set the shorter race grid. Sztuka stalled on the grid, as did Caranta, with both men now down at the back. The race for the first ever sprint race victory had truly begun, but could anybody catch Egozi? Andres Cardenas was wasting time dueling with his own teammate Valerio Rinicella, and both were out to prove they were the best driver on the day. Another safety car would bunch the field up again, adding to the workload for James Egozi. The restart would be crucial. There were mixed fortunes around the paddock. Lorenzo Castillo was trying to stay out of trouble, whilst Lenny Reed had already found trouble staring him in the face. Yet another safety car period meant another tricky restart, but Egozi was more than a measure enough to the challenge. But at MP Motorsport, the boys in orange were making hard work for themselves, and as the rivalry intensified, so did the risk. But further back, there would be more drama, as Kai Dadianani collided with Oscar Wirtz and Theodor Jensen. There's a saying in motorsport, safety cars breed safety cars. Looking back on the manoeuvre, Jensen's move was ambitious, but ultimately, 3 cars into one space never works. And so the safety car emerged again. Ironically, the sprint race was 10 minutes shorter than the regular half-hour encounters. But this time, there wasn't much green flag running. Egozi held his nerve and led the field, whilst Caranta was making up for lost time. He really wanted to score points. With only enough time left for 2 more laps once the wreckage was cleared away, it was important for everyone to make good use of the situation. Caranta and Rivera were playing a dangerous game for a pair of teammates. But Cardenas proved to be unshakable up ahead for Jules Caranta, who was running out of opportunities to move forward. Down at the bottom of the hill, he tried again. But overtaking moves are hard to finish off when your rival won't leave a lot of space to maneuver. Portugal's hopes at home rested on Francisco Macedo, and with a sensational move on Rinicella, he clinched 3rd position, although post-race he would lose that 3rd once more. His original overtaking move had been slightly offline, and so all his incredible defensive tactics came to naught, although now at least we know his true potential, and Macedo is definitely a man to watch. A 3rd position on the road was definitely an admirable reward for such a fantastic effort. Egozi, meanwhile, was staying in control, and he gave the Paul Motorsport team their first summer season victory in Eurocup-3, becoming the 4th winner in as many races, just like in 2024. Sunday brought the 3rd and final race of the weekend and a pole position for Ernesto Rivera. The Mexican grabbed the advantage up front with both hands. Caranta lunged for the outside of Sztuka, rolled off the power, and then held the car on the far side to draw level with his teammate, which put the Frenchman into 2nd place. The field once again spent the first lap learning the limits, as Sunday can present very different track conditions to the previous day. As everybody stayed out of harm's way, the man to ramp up the attack on Caranta would be Mattia Colnaghi, who had faced a tough weekend in Portugal so far. Despite his race-winning confidence in Austria, he would have to wait a while longer to move ahead of Caranta. In the next attempt, Colnaghi would bang wheels with the Frenchman in his bid to move ahead. Whilst further back, Maciej Gladiš stayed ahead of Jesse Carrasquedo, who drifted off the road and lost his front wing. How did everybody miss it? But that was just for starters. Colnaghi, Caranta and Sztuka were locked in combat for 2nd place, allowing Rivera the gap to run away in the lead. Colnaghi had claimed 2nd, but Caranta was fired up and audacious in his prowess against Sztuka, and his determination rewarded him with a move that could become the overtake of the season. The crowd was stunned, and so was the pole. Jules Caranta had come of age. The other pole, Maciej Gladiš, was now set to battle with Rinicella, who had struggled to match the pace of Colnaghi. But banging wheels with your opponent is always counterproductive. Whether it damaged the car or burnt out the tyres, it certainly affected the pace of Maciej Gladiš's car moving forward, and suddenly it was Enzo Tarnvinichkul who was hustling him for supremacy. The defence was becoming tougher on both car and driver, and as both men ran wide at the foot of the crest, it was clear to see how difficult things were becoming for both men. The South American battle further back was raging between Venezuelan Alessandro Famularo and the Mexican Lorenzo Castillo. But the Central American star Ernesto Rivera was untouchable out in the lead. Sztuka and Caranta were still swapping positions for the 3rd and final step on the rostrum, and the Frenchman in the Campos was having to work harder than he had ever worked before just to stay in front. But the Polish charge was never going to back down, especially as his consistency since the start of the year has kept him in the title fight. Sztuka retaliated against Caranta in an almost identical move to the one he had pulled on him. But Caranta wasn't demoralised, and his resolution to persevere motivated him to grab his position back almost instantly. It seems the war for the 2025 title will have many characters and chapters if this weekend is anything to go by. Ernesto Rivera proved to be the hero of the hour and unbelievably became the championship's 5th different winner in the first 5 races. On to Paul Ricard we go, where the challenge will continue.